PACWEST basketball season tips off on October the 18th, and a brand new face for the Camosun Chargers women's team is head coach John Dedrick. He joins us now. Hi, John.
Hi, how's it going?
This is exciting. A brand new head coach in the PACWEST, which we've seen a couple times throughout the season and years, but you are new to the Charger organization. So, where were you before? Give us a little rundown on where you were prior to being a coach at Camosun.
Yeah, so my history, I guess, is I grew up in Edmonton. I was involved with Bears basketball program. Ended up teaching out in St. Albert for 28 years. Was a high school coach with the women's team the last 15 or so until 2019. So right before the pandemic. And that last year, I was also, while I was teaching, I was also coaching at Augustana, which is a satellite campus for the U of A. And so the Augustana Vikings compete in the ACAC, which is Alberta's version of the PACWEST. So I was there for 3 years. So 1 year prior to COVID, then COVID year, and then 1 year after. And then got a job teaching and being head of basketball at Shawnigan Lake boarding school. And so that got my wife and I out to the coast. And then this kind of opportunity kind of not dropped on my lap, but was made aware of the opportunity at Camosun and had a pretty, frank and successful conversation with Scott, who's, the AD here, and was lucky enough to be named the head coach of the women's team. So that's my journey in a nutshell, over about 35 years of coaching, I guess.
That's incredible. So you bring a wealth of knowledge to the Chargers. Do you, because you have that experience, do you immediately get the respect of the players that now you have inherited from last year's team and some of the new players that are coming in? Because you have such a robust resume, I would imagine it just helps.
I think it does help. I get some street cred for sure.
Yeah.
I also think that was something that the players also wanted. And so part of the selection process that was involved was the fact that they were looking for somebody that had experience not only in, this level, like under the CCAA banner, but also, I'd been an assistant coach with the Pandas with Scott Edwards for 3 years. And then even prior to that, I was an assistant coach with Rob Poole and Grant McEwen. So I had a lot of touch points and some successes, in those leagues, in addition to some provincial team coaching as well. So I think that was something that was a draw for the program and for Scott, was to just to create a little bit of stability and some accountability, and in the hopes of kind of establishing a culture that that players and incoming players want to play, kind of be a part of.
So what's job number one? When you finally get the position, do you reach out immediately to the veteran players that you know or hope that come back? What is that process like?
Absolutely. And that's the first thing that I did, was I reached out to, basically as many people as I could, because what you have to remember too is I hadn't seen any of them play, right?
Yeah.
And so once I got the job, and even prior to that, like even going through the process, I was on the the internet, looking at, on YouTube, looking at past games that they had played. I got a list of players that were returning. So I was looking, even just for, for people that, just to have an idea of, oh, that's the position you play, and oh, that's how tall you are, and on all that sort of stuff. And then the rookies, like I mentioned to you before, I hadn't seen any of them play, and some of them didn't have game footage, right? So then it's a matter of, okay, trying to get to some open scrimmages or some gym runs, and trying to kind of pop in and just see if I can, get a sense of, what the team could be like, and, what might work, and that sort of stuff. Because, yeah, I was going in blind for sure.
Yeah.
And then you just got to try and make the best of that, right? So.
Do you hold team events or team bonding sessions with the team once you have at least somewhat of a roster and you understand who's playing on your team and who's coming back? Do you get an opportunity to get everybody together and really get to know them as much as they want to
Mhm.
know you?
Yeah, and I think what's kind of unique about or the team this year is that there's only 4 or 5 girls that are actually local to Victoria. And so the rest of the girls are kind of scattered around like mainland. And so what I tried to do was, especially some of the incoming recruits and some veterans, that if they were in the Vancouver area when I was involved with some club coaching, I made a point of trying to visit them and just say, hey, like let's just sit down and let's go for coffee, or I'll buy you lunch and let's just chat about who I am and who you are and that sort of stuff. And then once we all got kind of back in the same place and they were all kind of, we had an ID camp. So that was like the last weekend in August. And so most of the girls were back for that. And then we had a team camp and a team retreat. So, they all came out to my place. We talked about the covenants and things that we want to try and define our team by. And again, getting to know me, getting to know them, because some of them had not really known each other very well. And I think, you establish a little bit of a relationship or a bond even at that. You're eating, you're hiking, you're training, you're doing all those sorts of things. You're playing stupid games, you're singing karaoke, you're doing, yeah, it's that sort of stuff. And then once you get that or you have that a little bit, then you can start being a little bit more pointed with your coaching and and your direction with them, right? Because now they trust you or they trust each other, and then now the learning can really start.
Hmm. Even though you have that and you have training camp and that sort of thing, will it still take a few games to get used to players and them to get used to you?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And we've had a few exhibitions and just like scrimmages and that sort of stuff. And again, I've reminded them that they're probably the only team, like I said, in our league for sure, where even the veterans are learning from scratch. So, the offenses that I'm bringing in or the actions that I'm trying to get them to run, or, my philosophies on, defensive possessions and that sort of stuff are maybe completely different than what they're used to. And sometimes it's a case that they simply don't know because they haven't been taught. Or it could be, well, I do things this way and their previous coaches did things another way, right? And so getting them on the same page, not only between themselves, but them getting used to me is huge, right? And so especially with some of the veterans that have been around, like for some of them, I'm their third coach in 3 years. And so, yeah, and so, it's a completely new kind of environment. And so that's the importance of, kind of getting the trust and the relationship and the feeling that I only want what's best for them. And I've been around a long time. So it's not a matter of them having to fit everything that I do. It's also a matter of me looking at what I have and then adjusting what I think we could do, with the players that we have, right? And so that's the building block anyway.
Do you like that? Is that an exciting part of the game and the process is building towards the season and then adjusting and readjusting during the season?
Yeah, like I walked into Augustana like a similar situation where the head coach got a job actually in U Sport as she went to Mount Royal.
Okay.
The difference there was, and it was late in the season. So basically, I signed a contract like August 26th and walked in, and they were, but there I had known a bunch of the girls because they were more local girls, and so I had 2 girls on the team that played high school for me. I had probably 6 or 8 girls on that team that I had competed against or coached against, and so it wasn't me walking in like this team where there's literally 15 girls that didn't know me prior to 3 months ago, right? So there is a lot of it is exciting, but it can also be almost exhausting because you're trying to figure out um, where can each player have the most success in what position, while also keeping in, okay, they're student athletes. They're, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and trying to get that all really sorted while also teaching they need to know to be competitive, right? So I do like it. I do like the X and O's of things and saying, how can I make this work? But it takes a lot of work though too. Like, and so the girls have been great in terms of trying to be, buying in and learning my terminology and learning all these other things. So
Are you ready for ferry life, ferry travel? There's a lot of games, a lot of time on the ferry.
oh yeah, and I mean so I've been on the island 3 years, and so for my first year, my wife stayed home in Alberta, and so when I was at Shawnigan Lake, and so I drove back and forth once in a while. So probably at least once a month I was either driving or flying, and so I'm well versed with the ferry, but I think it's yeah, it's just it's part of the fact of life now, where we're at. It amazes me though, just even like how the budget that it takes though, because we're all responsible for budgetary things at Camosun, and just in terms of planning things and exhibition travel and those sorts of things, it's like, oh yeah, I got to remember that the ferry costs are this amount, per kid, plus, this vehicle is X, X
Yeah,
feet long. Oh, it costs this much more, and those sorts of things, right? So
yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something to get used to.
Think you'll be nervous on game one, even though with all your experience behind you, will game one sort of be?
Oh, absolutely. Like I think that I don't know that there is any coach, and maybe I mean maybe there are, but I don't think that there's any coach that doesn't have a little they'll have a little butterfly, in their stomach, so to speak, just because you're a competitor, right? And you can train and you can do whatever you think should be enough, but then there's always, version of me on the other bench
Right.
who's also trying to do what they can with, with the players that they have. And so it becomes a little bit of a chess game, and trying to, adapt, and which team can adapt quicker, and all those sorts of things. Right. And so for me, it's always about playing to our level of excellence, and so, if we play as well as we possibly can and come out on the losing end of a score, I'm okay with that, right? I just want to not have very many nights where we don't play as well as we should,
Yeah.
and have that as the reason that we might not be successful, right? So, but yeah, absolutely. Like I get nervous just like a player would. I go through things in my head. I, visualize what could happen, in these scenarios and all that sort of stuff. And so there's lots of things racing through my mind before and after games for sure.
Right on, Coach. Well, it's an exciting time. It'll be even more exciting come October the 18th. Thanks for doing this and good luck this season.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.